Hello YouTube, this is Morgan, Airspeed Prime here at my next Airspeed's Avatar Rewatch video. This one's going to be for Book 2 Earth, Episode 2, The Cave of Two Lovers. This one is animated by JM Animation, so the main studio. And yeah, this is overall a pretty good episode. I think it's one of those ones where I think for a lot of people this is going to be like a personal favorite episode. I think when you really judge just really based off the quality, it doesn't do enough to maybe justify being rated like too highly within the series, but absolutely is a very good episode overall. I, on my kind of personal list, would kind of give it a slight boost just because I think it is a very kind of funny, unique episode, how it has like that very important kind of lore stuff introduced and then a really good cliffhanger as well. So I kind of maybe treat it higher than maybe I think the general placement of most of the fandom of the episode. But yeah, it to me also is this thing where like it's one of these episodes where it's very similar to some of the episodes we had back in book 1 of just, oh, we've arrived at this location and we're going to have a little thing here before we get to the place we're actually going. And I think even within those type of episodes, it kind of stands out as being a little bit more unique than, say, like a Great Divide or some of those earlier episodes that kind of dealt with this stuff. This one feels, obviously, the obvious connection there, but just in terms of just the general structure as well, kind of like, the King of Amashu, where it's like this really funny episode that, has a few little important bits, but is actually like just really entertaining overall. So, yeah, let's get into some talking points now. So, immediately we're presented with the idea that, okay, this is going to be a little bit of a kind of Katara-Aang relationship kind of focus episode. We know that Aang likes Katara, and this is really the first episode. I suppose there's a little bit in the fortune teller, and, here and there you see some of the things she says. She's beginning to feel a little stronger and stronger about Aang. But I think in terms of any sort of a like relationship kind of really going both ways, this is the episode where like you really have to kind of say that Katara definitely has this in her mind to a degree that and is maybe beginning to think that this is a potential relationship here. In that, you have the fun moment at the start where like she's obviously training Aang and then gets really close to him and he blushes. But then as the episode goes on, you see that like, oh, she's the one to actually suggest the kiss in relation to the situation that they're in at the end. It's not Aang who's suggesting that, and he's actually kind of shocked that this is even happening. And then, obviously, by the end of the episode, there's the question of, like, did they actually kiss or not? And where do we go from here? Just very quickly to address, I suppose, that relationship stuff so we can focus on the rest of the episode. My interpretation of it has always been that they did kiss, but it was like a really kind of quick thing that was kind of immediately interrupted. And there's a couple of things that really hint towards it. One is that as Katara walks out of basically to get out into the light, Aang is kind of like, so, I suppose, basically my interpretation would be like he's kind of asking, what did that kiss mean? Was it just a practical thing related to the situation we were in, or is there actually anything going on here? That fits in line with kind of the way Aang kind of deals, I suppose, in the series kind of with the relationship, where he's really clear about like, okay, he likes her and he's getting these signals that she likes him, but it's kind of like, Katara, how do you actually feel about this stuff going on here? And then especially towards the end of the episode where you see kind of Chong leaves with the idea of like leaving them with that lesson about love, and then you see Katara kind of blush, and the idea is just like, why would she blush if nothing actually happened? Because it seems like a weird blush to have if it was just there because she suggested the idea of this stuff happening. So my interpretation definitely is that it happened, but it's not meant to be this like really important kiss, but more represents that like, no, here was them showing that Katara has some investment in this relationship as well, and this is going to be a big thing. The other unique thing with this episode is that I think the nomads, Chong especially, are really fun, unique characters to have for this episode. Even Song in the Zuko side of the episode is an interesting kind of role player type character in terms of, I suppose, what her appearance and just being around kind of asks Zuko to think about. But we'll deal with the nomads first. Obviously, they're meant to be kind of fun. They're nomads, so you have that immediate connection of just like, I'm a nomad. I'm a nomad too, and it being kind of very different, but somewhat similar. And I'm kind of, I suppose, getting the type of people that these guys are, in that they are meant to, I suppose, kind of be like these hippie type characters. They go around the place singing all the time. They're not the brightest, but they have surprising wisdom about some things. And then I like how they have the whole Secret Tunnel song, and just in general the music is great. But it's one of these things where you really look back and look at the lyrics of the Secret Tunnel song, and it effectively is earlier on in the episode than the actual story. The Secret Tunnel song basically tells the story of Oma and Shu and what happened there. So I really do appreciate that. If you were really paying attention more than just, oh, it's a random song that they're singing, and pay attention to the lyrics, they're kind of telling you what the importance of this is, because the song is basically the legend for the most part. Not many people know the full detailed story of Oma and Shu, but there is this kind of more widespread knowledge about them that comes from this song that maybe not a lot of the details are around. And then Aang and Katara getting deep into the center of the labyrinth in the mountain, they learn the true story later on, and so we get full context. But basically what they do with Chang the Nomads is that there's the cave collapse, they separate Sokka in with these two, and they kind of do a little bit of the fortune teller style thing with them, of you play Sokka, who's the kind of science and logic guy, with characters who for the most part don't really live their lives that way. And so you have Sokka with characters who are going to greatly frustrate him, and you kind of force Sokka into a situation that he's not very comfortable with, of having to do music and not being able to map it out because the tunnels are changing, and ultimately in the end, just having to really just grin and bear these characters, and eventually them coming out and him getting this moment of just like, he's made a connection with the Badger Moles. That's a kind of cool thing for Sokka. And at the end, just the whole idea of like his forehead's all red because he's been like face palming the entire time. That was a fun little way to just resolve the whole thing of just like it was hell for him being around these people for that long, and he was more happy getting out to just be away from them more so than almost being trapped in the tunnel. So there's that. Then I suppose song and the whole Zuko part of the episode, it's short, but I think it's really well done, because you start off again kind of quite comedically, like the other side of the episode as well. And Iroh just wants to make tea from this flower that he thinks might be the one that makes really nice tea, but it could also be a poisonous one. Turns out to be the poisonous one, and you just make the joke about, oh, this other flower might be the one that cures that. If it's not, it's the one that basically kills you. And so they find somewhere where Iroh can get some treatment for the rash that he's developed, and they come across Song here and her mother later on. And this is an interesting one, because it is, I suppose, one of Zuko's first times really like interacting with people from a different nation, and really having to go undercover and not immediately reveal himself as Fire Nation, and just getting the perspective from the other nations about how they feel about the Fire Nation, and getting to know and I suppose trust someone from a different nation enough to know that they're not just biased because the Fire Nation is attacking them or they're attacking the Fire Nation, and actually like learning that, like, is this nation that I want to be the prince of, that I think is so great in the way my father rules it, the fact that this stuff is happening to people like them, that isn't good. And it's just that seed planted in his mind. We see by the end of the episode, it doesn't have the biggest effect, but it's always there. And with what happens going forward with the rest of this season, it becomes this big issue for him that really makes him question a lot about the Fire Nation. So I very much appreciate the song scenes as a way to really start that journey for Zuko. More so than I think just like Iroh kind of maybe just telling Zuko stuff. Him learning by interacting with other people on his own makes it, I suppose, more meaningful in a way. The whole idea of like Song realizes that like, oh, you have a burn clearly from a firebender, not knowing the full story. She reveals that she was also hurt, and I suppose the idea is that her character is meant to be that she is the most kind of sweet, kind of kind-hearted character ever almost. And the fact that Fire Nation soldiers, when she was younger, like firebent at her for apparently doing nothing, that is a really bad move, and it really makes Zuko question a lot of things. So that scene for Zuko, you see the look on his face when he realizes that this happened to her. It's he actually, felt for her, because we obviously know from book one that Zuko, even though right now the character that he is very kind of driven by anger and this quest that he's put on by his father, is fundamentally a nice, kind-hearted person at heart. So seeing that side of him come out here was really nice to see. But again, it not having the greatest impact, or it not immediately changing his mind on things, because he still steals the ostrich horses from the family at the end. And Iroh was kind of, a little bit ashamed that Zuko made this decision after they were so kind to them, but it just showing that Zuko's not quite ready to make that journey just yet. So there is that's that side of the episode, basically, as they just continue on. They're on the run. There was a fun little scene where they mentioned, like, do we either potentially risk getting, like, captured by the Earth Kingdom or captured by Azula? And they immediately go, Earth Kingdom is the much better choice. Just, again, a little thing. They know Azula. They know they don't want to mess with her. She's worse than anyone else. But they go underground. The main team goes underground, and they're split up. The teams being Sokka and the Nomads, as I covered, and then Aang, Katara, and Appa. And the Aang and Katara side of the episode is interesting because obviously Appa's afraid being underground, but for the most part is that they come across the tomb of Oma and Shu and they learn the full story. And it's very interesting, the story, because it is the origin of the first human earthbenders who learn the true style of earthbending. A little bit of a retcon, but it ends up fitting in quite well. This is a thing a lot of people bring up, of just like, no, Avatar directly said that, Oma and Shu were the first earthbenders, yet very clearly in beginnings, the first earthbenders are just whatever people got bending from the badger moles, where the earth ones were. Which, unless they really give extra context to the Oma and Shu story at some later point, you kind of have to say that, okay, Oma and Shu were not technically the first people to have the power to move Earth in a bending style. They were the first earthbenders to learn a true and powerful way of earthbending, is the implication, being that, like, okay, the idea being that if they directly were the first earthbenders to learn from the badger moles, that immediately kind of contradicts stuff, because then Wan is also an earthbender, and then why would humans be at war if they're only living on the backs of lion turtles? So it has to happen later. So even just beginnings in the timeline sense also kind of makes that quite clear. So the special thing about Oma and Shu is that they're the first, I suppose, proper earthbenders that aren't just, rock throwers, basically. And yeah, it's a standard story, but it works here. They're from opposite villages, enemies that are enemies at war. But the two of them end up finding each other, falling in love, and to basically come together, without the villagers knowing. They basically find a way to, by learning from the badger moles, make tunnels and meet in the middle of the mountain. And the secret way that they found their way around the tunnels, which were constantly moved by the badger moles, was that they managed to realize that there are these rocks that, in the absence of light, glow. And that's how they found each other. That's the whole love is brightest in the dark kind of moment that sets up the reason for why the Katara and Aang kiss, was it not a kiss or not, moment happens. We also get that Shu died in the war eventually, and Oma, in a rage, ended up stopping that war and creating a peace between the two of them, which ended up forming the city of Omashu. Oma and Shu, that's where the name comes from. And that the city is a monument to the love of these two people, as well as being two of the most unique and notable earthbenders in history. So very, very cool lore story there. I also like the way they use a different art style, a much more older, kind of ancient art style, to kind of show it, showing that it is kind of this, 9,000 plus years ago thing. It must have happened probably, a year or two, a couple of years after. Yeah, like, I think realistically where you have to place this is that it's either during the war that Wan fights in at the end of his life, or maybe just a bit after that, which is, only like, maybe 10, 20, 30, a bit longer after that. in the timeline. So it's not too far removed from beginnings, but it has to happen after I suppose the line turtles go away. That's one of the key things in terms of placing anything that's in ancient history within the Avatar timeline. Is always you have to think about the fact that the line turtles the initial benders were around at a time when the line turtles were there. So the line turtles being present means that like human wars kind of can't really have happened. So that helps to kind of place a lot of things in terms of when they take place. So there's that, and yeah, I think that's most of the episode. You know, everyone ends up coming out. You have the goodbyes and just a little bit of wisdom from the nomads as they leave, of just Chong saying to Sokka, you know, like, you need to focus more on the where, like less on the going, or something like that. Just like the journey is more important than just like getting to the place, kind of type thing. But yeah, very interesting stuff overall within this episode. Again, like I said, nothing so important in this episode happens, I think, beyond the cliffhanger, which is obviously that they finally get out of this place, the last big stretch of their journey to Omashu, which they had to go through the mountains because the Fire Nation were nearby. And they get out and they finally see that, oh, it's Omashu, but it's under Fire Nation control. And immediately it's this big moment because this is established to be one of the bigger cities within the Earth Kingdom, and the Earth Kingdom is kind of like the core of what's left standing against the Fire Nation within the war. So this loss of Omashu signals a big moment that the war is not going so well for the good guys, and that Ba Sing Se is the last kind of standing free city, the last big major freestanding city in the world. And so as well as that, just that like Boomy, who's this incredibly powerful, like, you know, earthbender leader, his city was taken over. How is he? And that like Aang wanted to go there to learn earthbending. Now who's going to teach him? You obviously at this point in time think about like, oh, did they find like Haru and Tyro again, or anyone like that? But obviously we go in a different direction. So yeah, overall solid episode. It's one of those ones where like, if you appreciate the romance stuff, like the Katara and Aang interactions and what it means for their relationship in this episode is very important. But I think getting a lot out of this episode depends on obviously how much you care about characters like Chong and the Nomads. Do you like the songs that they sing? Do you really like the lore incorporation in this episode with Oma and Shu? And then with Zuko's side of the story, do you really buy into the fact that like this is the start of Zuko's arc in Book 2, of him getting the perspective from the other nations of how they feel about the Fire Nation, and him also being on the run from the Fire Nation, understands, I suppose, the cruelty of what his father is doing, and that he kind of in a way doesn't want to be a part of this bad stuff that the Fire Nation is doing. So, you know, I think it's one of those episodes where like it may not have the greatest impact on the series, but it is a very, very fun and enjoyable episode. So in the comments, let me know what your thoughts are on the episode, as well as what I had to say here. But that's been the video for today. Thanks for watching, and bye.